But there is a serious side to this. New research has revealed that almost a quarter of GPs are seeing obese children under the age of 4. It's a shocking story that will resonate on both sides of the pond. I'm Bev Turner and this is The Late Show Live. Welcome to The Late Show Live. Thank you very much for joining me on this Monday night. Joining me in Washington this evening, my panel of former Obama policy advisor Laurie Watkins and former Chief of Staff for Marco Rubio, Matt Terrell, and in London, businessman and activist Adam Brooks. Thank you all, and particularly thank you, Adam. It's always a pleasure to see you, my friend, but can I just say thank you to you both for getting here. You ran in the studio literally as I was reading out the menu there, Matt. Just describe to people a little bit, if you don't mind, what it's like outside those doors tonight, Matt.
Well, look, I'm from Wisconsin, so this is, like a day in June there. But, look, hopefully everyone's safe out there. Obviously, it's been a massive storm. But, I think some folks are having fun with it as well. But obviously we want people to be safe out there. Yeah.
I think that we hear, Laurie, there's been at least a dozen people have lost their lives in the last sort of 24, 48 hours in America. Here in DC, though, life trying to return back to normal. The roads have been gritted largely, but still the advice is stay at home.
Yes, absolutely. The government is telling everyone to stay home as well. Schools, I think, are closed again tomorrow from what I saw for D.C., so stay safe out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, and let's move on to our first story. We'll be talking to you, Adam, in just a moment, but Kemi Badenoch's reform headache continues. The former Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, has followed Robert Jenrick to become Reform's 8th Member of Parliament. Suella Braverman is the 27th current or former Tory MP to join Nigel Farage's ranks, with more expected ahead of his 7th of the May deadline. Here's what she had to say about the Conservative Party.
It's events over the last few days, which have tipped me over the line. The fact that it is a very toxic environment. There is now a concerted effort to expunge from the party anyone who wants robust borders, who wants a tough approach to law and order. Anyone on the right of British politics, there is a witch hunt, and they are, demanding pledges of allegiance to the supreme leader.
And an outrageous statement from the Conservatives in reaction to her defection has really cast a shadow over the Tories tonight. They originally said it was always a matter of when, not if, Suella would defect. The Conservatives did all we could to look after Suella's mental health, but she was clearly very unhappy, which is clearly a dig. The party then retracted the statement and reissued the same words, but removing the reference to mental health. Let me know what you think this evening. GBNews.com/your say. The Tories said that they accidentally released that statement. Now, whether somebody was kind of messing around in the office and said, oh, she must be mad to go to Reform and meant to delete it, and it was a bit of a joke, or whether they were genuinely suggesting that she'd been complaining about her mental well-being to the party, and they just outed her for problems that she hasn't publicly confessed. Let me know what you think. Let's speak now to Reform UK councillor Jamie McIver about this. Jamie, very good evening. Thank you for joining me. So are you celebrating the arrival of Suella Braverman tonight?
Well, I'm delighted Suella has joined the party. I knew her when I was in the Conservative Party myself. I think she's going to be a fantastic addition to Reform UK. But to be honest, I'm just celebrating that the true colours of the vile Conservative Party are now, the mask is slipping every single day. The true colours behind that organisation. I thought that statement against Suella was not just nasty, but it also proved the lack of seriousness the Conservative Party take mental health. It's something that is a problem in our country, and it's a problem that they started, in my opinion, and a problem that they made worse. And actually, the fact that they use a phrase like that to make some kind of political football about the fact that a colleague has left the party says it all, really, the sort of people that are running that organisation. And actually, I think many Reform members are really, really encouraged by Suella joining the party. Let's be very clear, what it means, what it signals is the complete spiralling decline of the Conservative Party. We know there's only space for one Conservative Party in Britain, and that is Reform UK. We are the only party that can challenge this awful socialist government at the next general election.
So what do you think the Conservatives, you say you used to be a Conservative, what do you think they meant by that statement? We did all we could to look after Suella's mental health, but she was clearly very unhappy. Like, are they actually exposing a problem that she's confessed to the people that she's worked with, or were they having a dig based on nothing?
Well, I'm not going to speculate because it would be completely private in that instance. But what it does show is that clearly the Conservative Party view people with conservative values as though they've got some kind of mental well-being disorder, because actually if you do have a view to the right and you are in the Conservative Party, and let me be very clear what I mean by that. I mean wanting controlled borders, wanting low tax, wanting to be pro-business, wanting, love of country, not shame of country, proud of your Christian values and ethos. If you have those views in the Conservative Party, you are treated as though you are a lunatic. I've been there myself. People think that it's extreme to want to control your borders, and that's why the borders have been wide open in our country. That is why we've imported terrorists, rapists, murderers to our shores, because we've had the previous government who didn't see that as a problem. So probably what they're referring to, and it would be wrong for me to speculate because I don't know, but there's a part of me that thinks, having been a member of that awful organisation, that they probably just think because she has views and she has conviction, that is somehow deviating from the social norm in the Conservative Party.
Let's Jamie, let's bring in Adam Brooks. I'm sure Adam will have a strong opinion on this today. Adam, now Reform have so many of Boris Johnson's former cabinet members, effectively ministers under Boris. They've had his Chancellor in Zahawi, they've got his Community Secretary in Jenrick, Culture Secretary in Nadine Dorries, they've got Braverman, who was Home Secretary and also Attorney General under Boris Johnson, they've got Political Secretary in Danny Kruger. How are they not just a rehashed Conservative Party now, Adam?
Look, you've got to remember that if they're going to target, say, 300 odd MPs, they're going to have a few very experienced, and even Nigel said that today, that they need experience on the front line. I'm not a Nadine Zahawi fan. I can't work out why they've done that. Nadine Dorries, for me, that's just a wrong move as well. But Suella was very tough talking on immigration, and at one point I wanted her to replace Rishi Sunak. I was invested in her as a person that wanted to solve our border crisis. So look, I do believe that she wants that. I believe she's tough. I believe that she's experienced, and she will strengthen Reform. And it is a great so-called signing by Nigel Farage. Again, they've got to be very careful. Not many people understand Nadine Zahawi. That upset a lot of people, Bev, for many reasons. Mine was because of his actions during COVID. But look, they need experience. That's it. You can't just be putting councillors up as MPs. You can't put novices up and expect the country to change. We need them in their first year to be radical, strong and brave, and they will need certain leaders to do that.
Jamie, you run the risk, of course, with a new party like Reform, of there becoming something of a bonfire of the vanities if there are too many egos and too many MPs from the Conservatives who see themselves as being part of a future cabinet. How will Nigel keep everybody playing nicely?
Well, I can assure you, Beth, that there are 270,000 members of this political party. They feel totally betrayed by the previous Conservative government, and they can't stand this current government for what they are doing to our country. And there is no way the membership, the ordinary Reform members that I have the pleasure of working with wherever I get to travel across the country, there is no way they're going to let anybody come into our party and be in any way challenging to Nigel Farage's mission and our joint mission to make Nigel Farage Prime Minister. Adam is right. We have got to be very sensible about the fact that we have a responsibility and a duty to deliver at speed when we get into government, whenever the next general election is. And therefore, we have got to have people in our party that have been on the inside of the civil service. The President of the United States of America was able to conduct 2 exceptional military missions recently, one in Iran and one in Venezuela. He was able to use the intelligence that the professional forces had on the inside to be able to deliver and execute those missions. If you look at the mission Nigel Farage is going to have when he enters Downing Street and what the civil service will try and do to him, we have got to have people in our team that have been on the inside, that have faced these people, so we can be one step ahead of the blob. And I do believe former Home Secretaries and former Chancellors can do that.
OK, brilliant. Thank you, Jamie. Thank you so much, Reform UK Councillor Jamie McIver there. And Adam, we'll be back to you in just a minute. But let's turn now to our big American story of the day here in Washington. It's the fallout of the Minneapolis shooting dead of nurse Alex Pretty. Here was the White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt talking on behalf of the president earlier.
Such dangerous rhetoric, as I pointed out, is exactly what has brought us to this position today, where you have elected Democrat officials across the country who are encouraging left-wing agitators and crazy people to go out and unlawfully obstruct lawful immigration enforcement. Again, these brave men and women of ICE and Border Patrol and the federal enforcement are just trying to do their jobs to enforce our nation's immigration laws and to go after the worst of the worst in this country. I would encourage everyone in this room, and I would encourage the Arizona Attorney General to look at the video of an ICE agent in Minneapolis. He was approached by left-wing agitators who were honking their horns and were screaming slurs at him. And he rolled down his window and he said, "What are you doing? I am out here trying to catch a child predator, somebody who has convicted crimes against an innocent child, and you are trying to obstruct me from doing my job." This rhetoric against ICE, comparing them to Nazi Gestapo, Donald Trump's police force, is despicable, it is shameful, and it is precisely what has led to the escalation of tensions in Minneapolis and in other places across the country.
So President Trump has had talks with the leaders in Minnesota. He detailed his phone call with Governor Tim Walz on Truth Social, writing, "It was a very good call and we actually seemed to be on a similar wavelength." Border Czar Tom Homan, he's Republican, has been sent there by the president and is expected to hold a press conference later. He's expected to clear up a rather confusing situation of whether ICE agents are leaving the state or not. Let's talk now to Zach Smith, former Department of Justice prosecutor and senior legal fellow at the Heritage Foundation, and Ajuma Baraka, a left-wing activist and former vice presidential candidate for the US Green Party. Thank you both so much for joining me. If I can come to you, Ajuma, first. As Caroline Leavitt said there, the officers were just trying to enforce immigration law and go after the worst of the worst. Is she wrong?
Only because basically what we are seeing.
I think he's frozen. I think Ajuma has frozen there. That's unfortunate. Let's see if we can get him back, shall we? Zach, same question to you. Is she wrong about the ambition of the ICE agents?
No, look, these are federal law enforcement officers that are working day in and day out to protect their communities and to enforce federal immigration law. And as we heard her say, unfortunately, there has been very heated, very incendiary, very dangerous rhetoric coming from many left-leaning politicians. Instead of fighting President Trump and his effort to protect American cities and American communities, these leaders should be working with him to help make sure that our laws at both the state and the federal level are being enforced. And yet, sadly, too many of these politicians have been trying to use the tragic events of the past few days to score political points, and that is not a productive use of anyone's time. It is not what the American people want to see. And sadly, at the end of the day, it ends up hurting their own communities the worst.
Is there an argument to say that specifically in Minnesota? Oh, hang on, I think we've got, OK, brilliant. We've got you back, Ajuma. If you could just, the question was, is Caroline Leavitt wrong to say that the agents are just trying to enforce the law and get rid of the worst of the worst?
Well, what she is saying is not in alignment with the policies as we have seen them executed in various parts of the country by ICE. We were promised that the objective was going to be to target the worst of the worst, if you will. But instead, what we have seen is case after case of individuals who are not wanted by any authorities. We have seen U.S. citizens harassed and detained. We are seeing what has evolved into what some people characterize as a reign of terror that's threatening the fundamental human rights of not only the undocumented in the U.S., but also U.S. citizens. So the execution by ICE has really turned a majority of the U.S. population against these heavy-handed policies, especially now that we have seen a couple of murders by ICE.
I presume that ICE would say if we weren't being obstructed by so many agitators and protesters, very well organised actually, with vehicles and blowing whistles in their faces, they would say if we didn't have to deal with that, we could just simply go about the job we have to do, identifying suspects and illegal aliens who need to be removed, knocking on their doors and taking them away quietly. Isn't it the pictures that we're seeing, though, Ajama, which is causing the conflict?
No, I think what we're seeing are the real concerns of U.S. citizens who are very much concerned about the heavy-handed tactics that they have been subjected to and witnessing across the country. It is I think, a reasonable reaction to what they see as a violation of not only the rights of the fundamental human rights of the undocumented, but also of U.S. citizens. So it is there are expressions of solidarity, of opposition, of democratic rights. So, and then what we're seeing, the reaction from ICE has been brutality, violence, and it's understandable because you're talking about a population, a force that's not trained to engage in policing of this type. And they definitely are not trained to deal with the kind of resistance they're seeing now from various communities. And so they have been reacting with emotion and violence. And the consequence is now a crisis, I think, for the Trump administration.
Zach, would you want to respond to that?
Sure. Well, let's be very clear. Everyone has the right to peacefully protest. I think that's a tradition every American would recognize and respect and support. But what is happening in Minneapolis, St. Paul, other cities around the country is not peaceful protest. Look at what's happened in the past week. We have had numerous assaults on ICE and other federal law enforcement agencies. Over the past year, assaults on ICE and other federal officers are up substantially. Within the past week, we had a federal official get his finger bitten off while he was trying to do his job, enforce federal law. And I think, too, if you compare the response of local Minnesota officials to many of these agitators, others who are committing violence, and compare that to what happened last week when many of these same individuals or other like-minded individuals actually interrupted a church service and desecrated a house of worship, Minnesota officials did not condemn that action. They did not seek to arrest those individuals, even though their actions broke several Minnesota laws that are on the books. And so I think it's very disappointing to see local officials not enforcing the law, not working with federal law enforcement agents to make sure that all members of their communities are being protected and taken care of.
Ajamu, what should the president do now? He sent Tom Humman in to try and bring everybody together, to work together, so the ICE agents are working with the local police. What do you want to see happen in Minnesota?
Well, I think what is really disappointing about what we have witnessed in Minnesota is the inability of local officials to basically protect their citizens. That when we have these unfortunate incidents of people losing their lives, the local officials have been completely locked out of the process, with the real possibility that individuals who may have violated the most fundamental of human rights, which is the right to life, may escape justice. So what needs to happen is for the Trump administration to cease and desist from these heavy-handed tactics, to quit using ICE as someone characterized as a mischaracterization, using ICE as a almost personal kind of Gestapo sort of national police force, and respect the Constitution and respect the fundamental rights of people in this country to be able to live and move around without being terrorized by this aggressive military force. That's what the people of these communities are saying.
Okay, thank
we
you.
want ICE out.
Thank you, gentlemen. I really appreciate it. Zach Smith there from the Heritage Foundation, and Ajamu Baraka, a left-wing activist and former vice presidential candidate for the American Green Party. Let me bring my panel in now. Folks, Matt, let me start with you. There are some issues where nobody's listening to each other. It is so profound, the difference in this debate. I don't know how you bring these two groups together. Tim Hammond, we're looking at the picture. Hammond, we're looking at the picture. He's got a massive job on his hands. How on earth do you convince the left this is a good idea? Because they just are not seeing where the right are coming from on this.
Well, everything's possible if it's been done before. And we've seen success with law enforcement working with politicians. Take Washington, D.C., where we are today. We saw the mayor of Washington, D.C. work with President Trump when President Trump sent in the National Guard. You're seeing other places in the country where politicians on both sides of the political aisle are working with law enforcement, and ICE is law enforcement. Despite what Governor Walz and the mayor of Minneapolis have to say, ICE is law enforcement and they're doing their jobs. And there's a precedent for what President Trump is doing here. ICE was utilized under President Obama. He used ICE to get people in this country here illegally out of the country. The bottom line is it all starts with leadership. And what the governor of Minnesota is doing and the mayor of Minneapolis is doing is wrong. They need to be doing what they can to calm down the protests here and encourage people, if they are going to protest, which is their American right, to do it peacefully. And we've seen many cases where they're not doing that. It starts with leadership. You have a lack of leadership in Minnesota right now.
Laura, you worked with Barack Obama. He used ICE. Why is this different?
This is different because we have a president that is actually utilizing our, National Guard, so you could say our military, utilizing that against its own citizens by sending them into these cities and using these premises that haven't been used in over 200 years, almost since the founding of our nation, puts that into play as a reason that he's doing this, and it's to round up the worst of the worst, but that's not what's happening. It's causing chaos in the streets. And in this instance, I don't see, the Second Amendment NRA card-carrying folks out for this individual who literally had a carried a concealed permit, registered his weapon. He was not going for that weapon. It was actually confiscated and taken by one of those agents. Everyone can see that on the video.
I think that's clear.
But to say, again, lump him into, this is why I'm answering the question about why this continues, this division. To gaslight the American people that have seen these videos and to say this was a radical individual who this is part of his MO as he goes to these kinds of blockades and to thwart police efforts and try to do this. No, he actually was responding to a woman getting violently shoved. Like, I'm sure that you were raised that if one of us got shoved in front of you and you didn't go try to help us like he did to that woman, then I'm sure that your mom didn't raise you in the right way, but I'm sure that she did because you would try to help us. That's unfortunately what happened to this individual at this time. That was what he was responding to. And those officers jumped on top of him and a man lost his life. So there's a difference between somebody is not peacefully protesting and they are a radical, a domestic terrorist, and calling people that, also calling Nicole Good that, when the American public knows that that's not true, that absolutely, Bev, adds fuel to the fire.
But there are so many issues that we're going to go to the break, unfortunately, but more of this to come. Don't go anywhere. This is The Late Show Live. Stay with us. Oh, apparently we're going to show you something. Protesters have gathered in.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GBNews, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, because the failure is
deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m, only on GB News.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Late Show Live. Back to our top story here in America. It's a shooting in Minneapolis. Well, earlier today, university students walked out of lectures in protest of the ICE agents. Let's listen to one of the students who spoke to the media there.
I'm really angry. I'm angry and I'm sad like all of the time. I'm a university student. I can't focus on my classes. I have a lot of friends who are really scared to go outside right now, you know, regardless of their citizenship status. Like, people are really afraid, and they have right to be, you know.
Honestly, I can't focus on my classes. I'm scared to go outside. Adam Brooks, when you hear these students, I still am baffled about the protests there because, as we've said before, if we had a group of people in the UK that were rounding up illegal aliens, as they call them here, irregular migrants, as we call them, who had criminal records for some of the worst crimes, we'd all be applauding that sort of support. And yet you've got students here saying, oh, it's just so distressing for me to have to see this. What are we missing, Adam?
Look, a lot of the youngsters in both America and this country are suffering some sort of mental health issue because they're just not understanding what is right and wrong anymore in life. The hypocrisy is off the charts from these lefties as well. Let's remember, it's the lefty anarchists that are causing chaos on the streets of Minneapolis. These ICE agents are trying to do their job. Now, look, you do not tug the tail of a tiger and expect to cuddle afterwards. These are armed officers. You do not get into their face. You do not turn up to a protest with a loaded gun, with numerous bullets in your pocket as well. It doesn't make sense. From the stories I've read, this guy is part of an anarchist signal group or social media group to try and infiltrate and stop ICE agents. I mean, that's all over the internet. So look, again, we see it when the lady was shot in her car. You do not put your foot down at anyone, let alone an armed officer. So these are tragedies, but they were needless tragedies. And the respect for the cops and the law enforcement in America seems to have been lost. And I think it's lefty antagonists that just want to turn this into like a war, them against the authorities, or really, let's have it right, them against Donald Trump, because we did not see this under Obama, who I think he deported about 5 million. You had no riots there. at all. This is just Donald Trump hate, and the left cannot stand it, and they want to get rid of him any way they can. And unfortunately, their behaviour is costing lives.
Laurie Watkins.
I'm not going to use my time to respond to all the falsities that he mentioned, but please, viewers, do your homework. There were so many lies in those insightful comments. I don't even know where. I don't even know where to begin.
What's the lie? Pick one.
Pick a lie. Thank you.
You are stating that these individuals are part. If you don't let me respond, then how can I respond to your lies? Give me a moment, please. Thank you. You stated that this individual, who was an ICU nurse who worked with veterans after they died from horrible diseases, suffering debilitating diseases.
That's nothing to do with
this guy is part of a left-wing radical group. That's what you said?
Yeah, so who is organising all these protests? Is he part of that group?
This person's name and his reputation? No. So
do you know
check
better?
your facts before you go on the air and say these kinds of things.
You tell me the
facts. Because it's absolutely harmful.
You tell me the fact. Why did someone turn to a protest with a loaded gun?
You. Now you have to go back and come back to me. That's how this works.
No, you tell me.
It is a bit difficult because we've got a delay.
Yeah.
But the question, Laurie, being, do you, and Adam would probably agree, even if he was part of an organised group, he probably in that situation did not deserve to die. Adam wouldn't want to see the guy.
100%. Nobody deserves to die. That's the whole point of all of this.
Exactly. So we all agree on that. So his point is, was he there as a deliberate agitator, filming the content with a loaded gun in his back pocket? Doesn't mean he deserved to die, but those are the facts that Adam put forward. But you think which of those is not true?
You know, the facts need to be fully investigated. Oh, but by the way, they've taken control away from the state and federal police in the state of doing an investigation, and now have only taken it into the Department of Justice and to the FBI's hands, which is unprecedented, by the way, because you would absolutely have these agencies working together to contribute and collect this evidence. You wouldn't silo them apart from one another. This is another, yet again, a case that's going to be open and shut. Oh, no wrongdoing, complete, total immunity for these officers, even though we never even did a full investigation. It's clear to see in the video what happened. The individual had every single right according to the Second Amendment. Kyle Rittenhouse, let's talk about that. Kristi Noem coming out and saying, now you're going to make me go off now. Kristi Noem coming out and saying, you bring a billboard to a protest, you don't bring a loaded weapon, and then say that he had these magazines, which you just reiterated here, which there has been no evidence whatsoever of that found on this person. So you're just toting and repeating these conspiracy theories. Anyway, he was allowed to have. He had a concealed carry permit. He registered the gun. He did the right exact thing that he was supposed to do, what the NRA applauds their card-carrying members to do. That's exactly what he did. So why is he, because he's a leftist, he's now a radical? He's now a psychotic person?
I think the issue here, and Matt, we will let you come in rather than just spectating.
Who was helping a woman who had just gotten pepper sprayed in her face and shoved to the ground. That was why he was responding. That was why he was video recording. It wasn't because he was trying to thwart a blockade by ICE agents.
But what President Trump has done today, having spoken to Tim Walz, is he
watch the videos.
What do you want to talk about? Because we can leave it to the investigation. We're all agreeing the man was not armed at the moment in which he was shot, but we have seen the footage of the ICE agent taking the gun out of his pocket. We see that. Even CNN report, even the left-wing.
And then he was shot 9 times. 9 times.
Yeah, outrageous.
9 times.
Outrageous. But that is, we are talking about an individual assassination of a man there. We agree on that. I don't believe that should have happened. Poor policing, whatever you want to put it down to. This is the picture that they released of Mr. Pretty's gun that was taken off him just before he was shot. So you have a right, Laurie, to be outraged that this man was killed under those circumstances. It is horrible to watch that footage. But Adam's point is, why would you be there in the first place with a gun in your back pocket? The left-wing agitation is what is giving rise to these sorts of scenes. And the idea that he was just there as somehow as a spectator and a bystander.
And that is the thing. You cannot have it both ways and say, oh, you can be there and peacefully protest, and then when a person is there peacefully protesting and they are antagonized by these federal ICE agents and boxed in, we know all their techniques and tactics that they're using. This has been widely publicized in global media around the world. We know what they are doing. They're setting people up. And when you do that and then say, oh, well, see, they came. How dare they come to a protest? She's a mother. She has a child at home. How dare she? This is about Nicole Good. How dare she even drive by if she was really doing that and it wasn't on her way home from dropping her kid off at school? How dare she go in this neighborhood? She should have known better. How dare this individual be having a concealed carry permit and doing the right thing? How dare he help a woman that had just been pepper sprayed in her face at close range by an officer and shoved to the ground when they were doing nothing but using their First Amendment right? How dare they?
Matt, let me bring you in, because Laurie supported Obama when he was, as you say, deporting record numbers of people. So is what we're seeing here Trump derangement syndrome, Matt?
And there's many people who are against anything, everything that President Trump stands for. I think the biggest challenge right now for the Democrat Party is they have a political base right now in the Democrat Party who's moving further left. And part of that movement is being anti-Trump. That's just a fact. And just talking about politics for a moment here, we're in an election year right now. And you cannot win an election with your base alone. You have to win over independent, undecided voters, low propensity voters, many voters that President Trump won over or made great gains with in the 2024 presidential election. So the bottom line is this. There are going to be many issues that matter to voters in the upcoming midterm elections and in 2028. One of those issues will be, of course, the economy. Another issue will be safety, security. That's going to be on the ballot. And right now, what Americans want is their neighborhoods to be safe and secure. And the facts are, in Minneapolis, you have people who've been in this country illegally, and that in itself is committing a crime, but who've also committed other crimes like rape, homicide, sexual assault. That's a problem. And right now, President Trump is fulfilling his campaign pledge to secure our border and deport people who are in this country illegally and to make America more safe and secure. That's something he campaigned on. That's something he's governing on. And it's going to be something that's going to be on the ballot in these upcoming midterm elections.
Okay, well, it's going to be a lively evening. Still to come this evening. Thank you guys for now. But still to come, we're going to take a quick break. An alarming new study exposing the obesity crisis impacting children under 5 years old in the UK. What is driving it? A top UK doctor joins me next. That picture is making me really hungry. This is The Late Show Live, only on GB News.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique.
And you're fighting like rats in a sack.
But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask.
OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician.
Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk
No,
now?
that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to The Late Show Live. The inbox is getting very busy this evening. Joe says the new guy isn't saying much. Two infuriated women. I think I'd keep stum too. I think he's talking about you there, Matt. And a few people are telling you to calm down, Laurie. Saying somebody, Neil says, is this a liberal meltdown we're watching here? And Christine saying, please stop shouting. And Michelle says, please stop shouting. And somebody else is calling you irrational. Are you irrational, Laurie?
Oh, I'm just very passionate is the word they use for women, right?
And just getting started, I think we can say, ladies and gentlemen, so do stay with us. Right, alarming new research has revealed almost a quarter of British GPs are seeing obese children aged 4 and under. The survey questioned 540 family doctors about their experience of managing obesity and found that almost half have treated boys and girls up to the age of 7 who are living with basically being way too fat. Joining me now is GP Dr. David Lloyd. Dr. Lloyd, thank you so much for joining me. My heart sinks when I see children walking down the road, of which there is a lot of them to love, and yours must be the same when they walk into your room. How do you handle it with them and the parents?
I totally agree, isn't it? It's sad to see people so overweight when they're so young and they're just saving up problems for later, and it's such a difficult problem because this same report highlighted just how difficult it is to talk to parents of children who've got overweight children. They either get angry or defensive or they make complaints about us. So it's a jolly difficult thing for us as ordinary doctors to deal with, and yet it is such an important thing. I think of it a bit like compound interest, really. The more you invest early in children, the cheaper they're going to become later on.
So that's interesting. So the reaction from the parents is they don't eat very much or they're not fat. Have we somehow normalised what a healthy weight is, David? Is that part of the problem?
It's part of the problem, but the problem is that cheap food is now full of calories, and good food is expensive. And so if you're poor and you're deprived and you haven't had education, then you're not going to buy the right food for your children. And that's the problem. It's a multifaceted thing. We did have a system called Sure Start, which started in the late 1990s, which looked at all three of those things. It looked at health, it looked at education, it looked at deprivation. And the stats showed that for every £1 you invested, you saved £2 later on. So it's a fiscal argument, isn't it?
I do wonder, though, whether times have changed. I remember that Sure Start programme. That was around when I had my first 22 years ago now. Can you believe the 90s are 22 years ago? I can't. I still think the 90s were 5 years ago. But anyway, you know, and it was a really good programme. But I wonder whether parents today would even go to those Sure Start centres. And if they did, would they still have the same attitude? You can't criticise me. I'm not interested in your education. I know best. You're victimising my child.
I think those arguments were still in place in the 1990s. I think they're still there. You've got to give young people a chance to develop. You've got to give them exercise. You've got to give them good food. You've got to give them the education. We're creating chronically ill children before they go to school.
Yeah, it's terrible. Thank you so much, Dr. David Lloyd there. I really want to get a word from my panel on this. Talk to Matt as the new boy who's kept stum while the ladies were shouting. Who do we blame for this?
You know, I think it's about blame. I think it is who's finding solutions right now. And actually, President Trump, to his credit, is trying to find solutions when it comes to health in general. You know, making America great also means making America healthy again. You're seeing under President Trump relooking at reforming the food pyramid. You're looking at, you know, food dyes. Also under most favored nation policy, you're seeing the cost of weight loss drugs come down under President Trump. So I think it's about who's finding solutions. President Trump's working to do that, along with RFK Jr., Secretary Kennedy, and I think that's important.
Adam, I don't know about you, but I watched the work coming out of the Department of Health and Human Services here, aghast at the changes they're making. And Matt has just spoken about some of them. The work that Bobby Kennedy is doing is incredible. He's tackling everybody that has something to do with the food industry. Do you have hope that we might follow the same path one day, or is it just going to be up to the parents in the UK because no one's going to help us?
Our governments seem to just want to ban adverts. We can't see any junk food on the tube. We can't see them on the TV. That isn't working, Bev. Young kids and children need physical activity. They need to burn off those calories. It's down to schools and it's down to parents. And there is no excuses to have an overweight child or an obese child. It's so selfish. I've got 3 kids. None of them are overweight at all. You know, one of them doesn't even like sport, but he's got a balanced diet. And it's about balancing, giving them the treats, giving them the junk food every now and then to reward them. And, you know, every other kid has it. But a balanced diet and educating them on what's healthy and what's not. But it's down to schools. One of my kids' schools, a lot of the after-school clubs can't happen because there's not enough staff members. That's the sort of problems that we've got in schools now. We need to push sport and push physical activity and get these kids moving again. It can't just all be diet. A lot of them, they're on their phones, they're sitting watching telly.
Yeah, they're not moving and they're eating too much rubbish. Laurie, you grew up in Florida, very outdoors lifestyle, scuba, beach, snorkeling. How do we get kids to grow up healthier?
Yeah, I'm also the author of a health and wellness book called Go From Stress to Strong. And yeah, so I know a little thing about this, and I would say that it absolutely should start in the home. The earlier, the better. When it happens with children, understanding, you know, protein is important, also getting the right vegetables and fruits, carbohydrates. Carbs are not a bad thing. Making sure that they eat good protein like meats and vegetables and seafood, etc. A plethora of different things, but it has to be reinforced by the parents. So if they see the parents eating unhealthy, the kids are most likely going to eat unhealthy too. So it's up to you too, parents. Set good examples.
Yeah, absolutely. You must be delighted then, Laurie, with the work that Bobby Kennedy's doing under President Trump.
Oh, it's interesting, yes.
Oh, you can't even applaud what he's doing. TDS.
All right, on the food, but maybe not on the vaccines, Bev.
Right, we're going to look at the front pages of tomorrow's papers in just a minute. The Telegraph's headline about China hacking Downing Street phones for years. This is The Late Show Live, only on GB News.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/your say. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/your say, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to The Late Show Live. Now let's have a look at the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers. The Telegraph are leading with this story on China hacking phones in number 10. So the Telegraph are saying that China hacked the mobile phones of senior officials in Downing Street for several years. It's understood to have compromised senior members of the government, exposing private communications to Beijing. The hackers, sponsored of course by the government, are known to have targeted the phones of some of the closest aides to Boris Johnson, Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak between 2021 and 24. We don't know whether the hack included the mobile phones of prime ministers themselves, but one source with knowledge of the breach said it went right into the heart of Downing Street. Now, this is a bit awkward because Sir Keir Starmer departs for China this week, the first visit by a British Prime Minister since Baroness Theresa May in 2018. He's there to secure trade and investment ties with Beijing. Matt, are we a little naive in the UK when it comes to China? This would suggest so. America views them with much greater suspicion.
You know, I think some are naive to what's going on with China, not just in the UK, but around the world. But look, the truth is China's a threat. And what you're seeing right now is President Trump, at least here in the United States, go on the offense on this. You know, the best defense in terms of national security for any nation, whether it's the UK or the United States or any nation around the world, oftentimes is a good offense. And President Trump is going on the offense against China. Part of Greenland, by and large, is going on the offense against China. You know, what you saw President Trump do with respect to wanting to acquire Greenland, that's largely all about China. A lot of the other things that President Trump is doing, both on the domestic front and the foreign policy front, is countering China. And I think the UK needs to do the same. Canada needs to do the same. We're seeing that right now in the news with respect to Canada and trade deals as it relates to China. So I think nations around the world need to be mindful of what China's agenda is. They're out going on the offense right now, which means nations like the United States and others need to go on the offense and defend themselves from China.
Laurie, your thoughts on Britain's relationship with China? I mean, it worries me when we've only got 20 seconds for you, but it worries me when we hear that they've been spying on the British MPs. How do you feel about it?
Well, this is not surprising to me. I'm sure it isn't to my fellow panelist over there, but also the further that the United States isolates itself geopolitically, the closer that all of our allies are going to turn towards China. I'm glad Matt brought up about Canada. That was extraordinary what happened with Canada and China, an meeting earlier before the Davos summit.
OK, we'll be talking to you in a little while. Adam, we've got to take a quick break to have a look at the British weather. Here it is.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Box Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello, very good morning to you. This is your GB News weather update coming to you from the Met Office. Storm Chandra is here. It's already brought some very heavy rain and it's going to continue to do so through today, as well as the risk of damaging winds. The strongest winds will be across parts of Northern Ireland. Eastern parts of Northern Ireland have the risk of gusts of around 70-75 miles per hour and some significant disruption likely. Worth noting elsewhere, as the band of heavy rain pushes its way northwards, we're going to see some significant snow building up over higher ground of parts of northern England and also much of Scotland, and then elsewhere showers following in behind after a very wet night towards the southwest. Temperatures just about getting into double figures towards the south, much colder than this further north, all the while when it's so wet and so windy, well, it's going to feel much colder than those temperatures may suggest. So a wet end to the day across much of central, northern and eastern Scotland. Lots of snow falling and accumulating over the higher ground. That's going to cause some disruption. The strong winds and the heavy rain continues across Northern Ireland for a little while yet. Difficult conditions for the evening rush hour. Meanwhile, plenty of showers then feeding in from the south and west across much of England and Wales. Just some central eastern parts of England having a drier, clearer end to the day. Then as we go overnight, well, we start to see the influence of Storm Chandra clearing away. So the weather will be quietening down. There'll be some dry, clear weather across some central eastern parts of England, and that could allow for a touch of frost perhaps. Elsewhere, some rain towards the northeast of Scotland. Some showery rain towards the southwest, and with that, temperatures not dropping as low where we have the cloud and the rain. Then Wednesday, actually, for a large chunk of the country, doesn't look too bad a day. Yes, a frosty start, but there will be some dry, even sunny weather around for many places, the exception being across eastern parts of Scotland, some wet, some wintry weather here, and also across much of Northern Ireland and at times parts of Wales and the southwest, where it will be cloudy and wet at times as well. Temperatures, well, similar to today, but feeling a bit more pleasant out of the rain.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
isn't it?
no,
Because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique. And you're fighting like rats in a sack. But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask. OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician. Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits. You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays, here only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Tom Harwood. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to The Late Show live from Washington, D.C. This is GB News with the stories shaping Britain and America.
This rhetoric against ICE, comparing them to Nazi Gestapo, Donald Trump's police force, is despicable, it is shameful, and it is precisely what has led to the escalation of tensions in Minneapolis and in other places across the country.
White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt talking there on behalf of the president as the fallout from the shooting continues. President Trump has sent his border czar out there as negotiations between the administration and leaders in Minnesota continue. We will bring you the very latest. We're expecting a press conference soon. The biggest news in the UK tonight, though, is this.
It's really upsetting to see people forget that we're a country that we have immigrants to thank for, and I feel the same way about my home country in the UK.
That's clearly not the biggest news in the UK tonight, but that is actor Will Poulter, another celebrity making that age-old mistake of thinking that their opinion on political issues matters. This is Bev Turner, and this is The Late Show Live. No breaks in this hour. The biggest British story in the earlier script was about Suella Braverman moving to Reform, if you were wondering what that was. But let's move to the other big story. It's been in the press for months now, and it is not going away. Ministers have been told that the deal to hand over the Chagos Islands to Mauritius cannot happen for several weeks. Labour has admitted the government's deal could collapse if President Trump refuses to renegotiate a key US-UK treaty. So Keir Starmer's plan was thrown into chaos after warnings that it may breach this 1966 defence agreement, with Washington forcing ministers to pull the bill just days before it was due in the Lords. Delighted to say we're joined in the studio. He's made his way through the snow. It's Rob Midgley, who is a spokesperson for the Friends of British Overseas Territories. Rob, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Listen, you have come to town to hopefully talk to important people here. Tell us why and how desperate you think your mission here is.
Look, this is a really critical week. I mean, we saw Donald Trump made those initial statements on Truth Social, so we know that profile has now been raised to the White House and the State Department and all of his advisors below. So this is a really critical week that we come out here, we meet all those advisors, we meet the State Department, we get them to understand the real situation, and we get them to understand what the UK is about to say to them as well. We say how to combat that and maybe offer a solution as well. So yeah, this week is really important.
People often think that President Trump is on transmit all the time and doesn't really listen. I think that's an inaccurate characterisation, actually, from what I've seen. How open are they to listening, to really understand this story?
Well, I think certain advisors are a lot more open to detail than perhaps he is, where we do manage to get an audience with him. I'm not saying we are, but if we do, we'll only obviously just say the top line stuff, but we've got a list of all of his advisors who are across this where we can offer legal support to and really dig into the details of why this is bad for the US.
Because it was a little bit disappointing, I'm sure you'll agree, when he was in the press conference last week, when he stood up in the briefing room before he went to Davos and was asked about the Chagos deals, and he said, I don't really know why Britain is giving it away, maybe they need the money. And some of us in the room were screaming, no, it's worse than that. We're actually paying for them to go away. And that's an example, you mean, of where he maybe hasn't. Because who would understand that?
Well, this is why we're here. And, I contacted their team straight away and said, look, how do we get information directly to him? Who can we go through to get that information, to make him understand what the risks are to the US, what will happen to the military base in 99 years, and, what the whole legalities of it is. That there's actually no legal basis baseline to do this on. We are sovereign of this territory, and he needs to know that.
And as I've just said there, America does have the ability, does it? You tell me if I'm wrong, to be able to veto this.
Yes, I mean, if you look back into the Treaty of 1966, it says the US recognises British sovereignty, and any changes to that would have to go through them. Secondly, I saw earlier today, which is quite interesting, that actually they need 2 years notice if we're going to make any changes to that treaty. So yes, we've been able to delay the Lord's process until I think it's the 8th of March now, but actually according to that treaty it should be 2 years process, which would probably buy us enough time to just kill the whole thing.
And do you think the Prime Minister would, maybe part of him might be happy with that? Well, would it be seen as a defeat if that comes to fruition, as in you've got this 2-year notice period effectively? Because that would give him an off-ramp. He can maybe not be humiliated. It takes it off his desk. It kicks it into the long grass, and he can park it for a bit.
I mean, this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to offer a solution, an easy way out for the government at this point. We recognise that it's actually really embarrassing for them, and it's something we want to do. We want to kill this whole thing. You know, I'm not going to hold back from that, but we want to offer a solution that doesn't embarrass them, and it can be an easy off-ramp for them just to pull back and say, actually, we need to consult Chagosians, we need to go by this 2-year framework, we need to ask the US properly, we shouldn't really hold back all this legal advice, and yeah, we can, you know, dispose of this nicely without, you know, spending too much political capital on the Prime Minister.
And what is your organisation, Rob, and why is this important to you?
So I'm from Friends of the British Overseas Territories that raises the awareness, promotes and supports the overseas territory. So obviously Diego Garcia sits within the British Indian Ocean Territory known as the Chagos Islands, and that is part of the 16 overseas territories that we want to protect for the future.
Right, and do you normally have a good relationship with British governments?
As in overseas territories or
your
UK
organisation. I mean, your organisation. Have you traditionally had a good relationship with previous prime ministers, and maybe this occasion it's a little bit more fractious?
I think it comes in sort of leaps and bounds. I think when we first started, the OTs, the overseas territories, weren't very prominent. They weren't really supported in the ways, and we've helped to draw that level of support up to raise awareness about what happens in Gibraltar and the Falkland Islands and the others that no one knows about, like Bermuda or Anguilla, Pitcairn Islands. You know, they're all out there, and we really want to raise that awareness. And I think, you know, thanks to the news agenda, I think more or less everyone has heard of the Chagos Islands by now, because before that everyone recognised it as British Indian Ocean Territory, but now everyone knows it as the Chagos Islands. So that's a result of us constantly lobbying and campaigning for this cause.
Your job is not going to get any easier, though, is it? In an age of rewriting history, let's say, or looking at things through a different lens in 2026 in terms of identity politics, in terms of the people looking at the colony as being negative. And how optimistic are you that the messages that you're trying to get across, that these are territories which we need to remain close to and remain in control of, that message will actually remain?
Well, look at the Chagos Island. It is so strategic in where it is, and we can really balance it out. Tony Blair commissioned a report, the KPMG report, that looked into the feasibility study of resettling Chagosians on the Chagos Islands while maintaining British sovereignty and securing the base. And that was brought out in 2014, and that costed £3.2 billion. Because the Conservative Party at the time thought that was sort of austerity, and they didn't really want to spend that amount of money creating a civilization, it's suddenly very cheap now compared to the £46 billion that we then are now going, well, we might be renting back Diego Garcia in the future. So that's one of the solutions that we want to put forward, is saying, look, these Chagosians are pro-British, they want to go back to their islands, maybe we can resettle them on the outer islands, maintain Diego Garcia, protect sovereignty and protect security, because right now we are employing a Filipino workforce to work on Diego Garcia. What if that's worked by Chagosians? You know, we're creating an economy for them, and we managed to do it in Ascension Island, where we have people from St Helena, which staff Ascension Island, US and UK base. We do it in the Falkland Islands, we do it in Gibraltar, we do it in Cyprus, in Akrotiri and Dikelia. Why can't we do it with Diego Garcia?
Fascinating stuff, honestly, Rob. I wish you well this week. You're hoping to get into the White House. You're hoping to talk to the important people while you're here. You've literally just got off an aeroplane and come through the snow. When will you know if you have been successful?
What, as in meeting these people, or in the whole campaign? The
whole campaign.
So
what does success look like for you now?
What we want to do is get that bill withdrawn completely. So it's been suspended by the House of Lords. We want that withdrawn 100%. We want it off the table completely. Everyone thinks it's over already. It's not over, because Labour can bring that back very sneakily. They can make this whole news agenda go very quiet and sneak it back into the Lords at any day now. So we want the US to step in and say, we're withdrawing support of this deal completely, and therefore the SCDO will have to say we're withdrawing the bill, because this bill is completely void until ratified. So the UK government can withdraw it any time.
Okay, well, I appreciate you coming in, honestly, and we can sense the urgency of this issue. It's thank you for raising awareness of it. It's fascinating. Right, that's Rob Midgley there from the Friends of British Overseas Territories. Let's talk now to Adam Brooks in London about this. Adam, I still find it amazing that when you hear Rob's depiction of this situation and how sort of simplistic it is, in a sense, that we are giving this island to Mauritius and we're paying them for the privilege of doing so, all based on the assumption that what we did in the past was wrong and that we have to pay back for the crimes of the past. Like, no wonder President Trump can't get his head around it, because it's so far from what they would ever do here in the White House.
Look, in my opinion, this is because they will never get reparations past the British people and the British public. They're going for this Chagos deal. Now, it's so crazy, you have to ask, is this government compromised? We spoke earlier about China, listening to MPs' phone calls or bugging offices. You have to ask, what have they got over this government, because it doesn't make sense. Now, your guest just said everyone's now heard of Chagos, and I agree with that, but everyone doesn't understand really what's going on. The average man on the street is not that bothered about Chagos. So my analogy, that when it first dropped a few months ago, I said, look, Britain is like your house, and Chagos is like your garden shed. Now, it's like giving our garden shed to a neighbour and then paying that neighbour to use your own garden shed. It makes no sense at all. And this is what is happening with the Chagos Islands. It's going to cost us tens of billions over the years. There is a problem, though, because Mauritius think this deal is done. And I'm led to believe that they've cut their own taxes at home, and that possibly up to 80% of people that pay tax in Mauritius think that they've got a better deal now because of the Chagos agreement. So look, it's very complicated, but I just hope President Trump can stop this and we can retain our overseas territory, because I do not trust this government not to give away the Falklands or Gibraltar. They really are that sinister, and I don't trust them at all. But if Nigel Farage can do his bit and get Trump to stop this deal, Nigel Farage will be a hero amongst many people in this country.
Maybe the Late Show Live's playing a part as well. We do know that they like to tap into us here, so maybe they're watching, Adam. Right, let me bring you some breaking news here on the Minneapolis situation. The Atlantic is reporting that Gregory Bavino has been removed from his role as Border Patrol Commander-at-Large. Now, this is the guy in the middle here. You're seeing behind the lectern, he's been depicted as a little Napoleon there. They say that he's expected to retire soon. They've cited a home security official and two people with knowledge of the change. The Atlantic is saying that this is the Trump administration reconsidering its most aggressive tactics. So we know that Tom Hummon, the border czar, as he's called, he has done a phenomenal job of closing off the southern border here in America, but he's also worked with previous administrations. I described him as a Republican, Matt. Is he a Republican?
Tom Hummon?
Yeah.
I don't know his political affiliation. To be honest with you, I think he's a law enforcement individual who cares about law enforcement.
So he's effectively kind of almost apolitical, Laurie, because he worked under Obama at the same time as you did. Do you know?
Well, he was an advisor to President Trump, also on his campaign. And when there was that investigation by the FBI, he said that he was alleged that he said he had access into President Trump, and that was the political side of the campaign. So
okay, but he has worked for previous governments, blue
yes,
governments as well.
As a member of law enforcement, yes.
Okay, so if this is true then, Matt, that we believe that he's been stepped down, he was all over the media here in America. I couldn't actually believe it because it's so different to the UK. When an incident like that happened with Mr. Pretty being shot on the street, Greg Bovino is brought out there to talk to the media and did a very, very long series of interviews where they were grilling him on all the detail and all of the situation. You'd never see that in the UK. And perhaps that's what's done for him, because he didn't answer some of those questions very well. He obviously hasn't poured oil on troubled waters. If anything, it's the opposite. Do you think that's what might have happened here, Matt, after this phone call between President Trump and Tim Walz today?
Well, look, it's up to President Trump to decide who is on the team or not with respect to the administration at large. But look, it's not just about the personnel here. It's about the policy. And right now, President Trump is doubling down on the policy that he campaigned on, and that is to deport people here in this country illegally from the country, to secure our border. And that's what he's doing in Minnesota. Now, I think where the White House wants the narrative to be on this is talking about putting a personal face and narrative on what's taking place in Minnesota. And that's not with the protesters, but it's with these individuals who are here in the country illegally, in many cases have committed horrific crimes, whether it's sexual assault, whether it's rape, whether it's homicide. That's what the narrative needs to be. And by and large, the Trump administration, I think, has been doing an effective job talking about the fact that what they're doing in Minnesota and nationwide is to protect Americans nationwide. So look, it's up to President Trump who's on the team. But again, personnel is one dynamic of it. The policy is the larger one. President Trump's going to drive the policy on this and expect him to double down on what he's doing when it comes to border security. Might be some changes here, but this is something he campaigned on. It's something he's delivering on.
Laurie, if the protesters just went home and stopped campaigning and agitating, what would happen then?
I actually had those thoughts myself, and over the weekend, well, before the weekend, towards the end of last week, there was like this blackout where people didn't show up, and it actually force some people to have some conversations and bring people to the table. But to build off of what my fellow panelist was talking about, this immigration issue, recent polling is now showing Donald Trump and his administration and Republican members of Congress.
I just wanted to answer my question.
Yeah, sure.
What would happen if the protesters went home in Minneapolis?
What would happen if ICE agents weren't deployed to these cities? What if they went home? Can you imagine that?
But it hasn't.
What if there was no tear gas? What if there were no Gestapo-like clans of these people in groups, Bovino in the middle of them, going into targets and plucking people out, or going into people's places of business and rounding them up, or shooting off tear gas where a 6-month-old went unconscious, was just caught in the crossfire. These types of situations that people are seeing, and that was what I was going to say, is Donald Trump's winning reality, where he won on immigration, is deeply eroding, and he sees that. Up to 70% of people here in the United States do not agree anymore with the way that he is handling immigration. It's no longer about the policies that you were talking about. This is about the perception, and every single day, any win that Donald Trump gets in the category of rounding up the worst of the worst, and his numbers continue to go up, none of that matters when the American people see another murder, an innocent American citizen getting murdered, the second murder in 17 days. That is what is on the minds of Americans, and I think that I don't know the details because this is breaking news as I was sitting here with you, Bev, but the fact that Mr. Bovino is, leaving. He is the head of Border Patrol. He should actually be along the border. There is no border in Minneapolis, Minnesota, as far as that's concerned. So, hopefully he'll be able to focus on the things that he's supposed to be focused on, not deploying people into city streets that are masked and are scaring and terrifying everyday Americans.
Let's bring in Adam. Adam Brooks, your response.
Look, I want to know why the left in America and the left in Great Britain always seem to side with foreign sex predators and people that target women and target children? Why can they not allow authorities to do their job and get these people that break into countries illegally, like they have in America, like they do here? We've got the same problem with asylum seekers, raping, sexually assaulting, paedophiles, and the left seem to make the case for them to stay. What is the matter? What is the warped thinking of the left in this case? The Democrats in America, they cozied up to Antifa. You've got a massive anarchist problem on the streets of your cities and towns in America, where the left are just allowed to go around threatening people. Your trans agenda, they are so violent and so aggressive. You've got to look at yourselves and think, why
just so you
on the
know,
left?
viewers, that's not what's happening here in America.
Yes, it is. We've seen the videos.
That's not what's happening
here in
America.
We've seen the mass videos of Antifa going to trans protests, going to these protests and tackling the authorities. You make excuses for that. And I want to know why the left always want to protect the people that break the law and target our women and our children. Why, Laurie? Why?
So you're accusing me and saying that I support those things?
No, I'm asking you why you
I don't.
But I think
Laurie, that's not what I was saying.
Yeah,
Please stop being irrational.
And you absolutely know it.
You're
Antifa?
being irrational. You are being irrational.
Where's Antifa? What are you talking about?
What? So
I guess I'm being irrational. Is that what you call women
Antifa doesn't
who are
exist?
Standing up for themselves?
Antifa,
Next thing
Antifa
you're gonna
doesn't
say
exist,
I'm
Laurie?
emotional too, right?
What, masked and armed Antifa doesn't
not
exist,
at these
no?
rallies in Minneapolis, Minnesota. That's what I'm correcting.
I think I just want to ask my original question, though, Laurie. What would happen if all the agitators just went home?
I gave you an answer already, and I said, what if these ICE agents were not deployed to cities that are seen as sanctuary cities because they're led by Democratic mayors?
But don't answer it with another what if. Answer it with a question. If tomorrow all of the agitators and the people who don't want ICE to be there, people who hate President Trump and anything that he does, let's face it, because that is who they are, if they didn't show up on the streets
tomorrow, if they didn't show up, guess what? That means
happen?
that people are not just going into and busting down people's doorways without warrants and not protecting their Second Amendment rights by going in and confiscating people.
But is it okay?
This is not happening. Stop calling human beings illegals. They are not illegals, and that's
not
who are being targeted here either.
And don't tell me how I should
citizens
speak,
whose
Laurie.
rights are being violated.
I'm not a weak American liberal.
Laurie,
don't talk to me like that. Okay?
Then don't refer to human beings that way.
The pictures that President Trump held up in the briefing room, and you can see them. The people that they have managed to find, arrest and deport, the ones who are child predators, murderers, rapists, killers, are you okay to see those people removed from the country?
Of course, no one is saying that we're not. What about all the people involved in the Epstein pedophilia ring? What about all of those people? If you're so concerned with pedophiles, you want to say the P word like 15 times since you've been sitting here on this desk. You must really have some kind of, overarching policy issue. This is at the top of your list. You keep bringing up trans issues and all of these wedge issues that you like to do against
you've got
people
the problem in America,
that have
Laurie.
any opposition to Donald Trump, and say that they're members of Antifa. They're domestic terrorists.
We've seen the videos. You sound deranged.
Because they're not peacefully protesting because they disagree with legal immigration. No one is against
you are defending the indefensible.
So how do they get those guys? And I will bring Matt in a minute. But how do you get the guys that we've just described, the proper wrong-uns who've come to America from other countries, who have committed the most awful crimes, and they are real. Not everyone that gets a knock on the door from ICE is that, but a lot of them are. How do we get those people out politely, which it seems is what the protesters want to happen? Can you do that?
Yeah, you work with the local police, you work with state police, you work with agencies that are feeding intelligence, and you get these people removed. Everyone is all for that. Stop turning this into something it's not.
But has that worked in the past, Matt? Let me bring you in.
Yeah, did you see this happening under the Obama administration? Everyone likes to point to that little analogy right now.
That's the whole
when
point.
was there this kind of chaos in the streets?
You weren't all deranged under Obama.
That's the point, because he handled it in the right way. The numbers were higher and he handled it in the right way. There's a way to do this, and this is the wrong way.
But isn't that, Matt, please come in, isn't the problem, though, what we've just identified is under Obama, you didn't have a radically disturbed left wing who somehow want to prove their virtue by sticking up for criminals, and therefore they weren't on the streets because it was Obama who was apparently a hero and it wasn't Donald Trump who's apparently the enemy. Matt.
The facts are the facts. President Obama used ICE to deport illegal immigrants from this country. Many people called him the deporter-in-chief. Many people gave him that nickname. And so, look, the truth is we got to talk about the facts in this situation. And right now, you're seeing this really come down to party lines. You see Democrats upset right now because anything and everything President Trump does, they're against in many cases. You're seeing Republicans who are supporting President Trump on this. The question is, in an election year, where are those independent, undecided voters? Where are those low propensity voters? And they came out in 2024 during the presidential election and said, we are with President Trump, many of them. And the reason why is because President Trump wasn't just talking about what he would do on the economy or inflation or on tax policy. He talked about what he would do on border security. He talked about what he would do on illegal immigration. And he compared and contrasted his record on border security and illegal immigration with President Biden's. Under President Biden, you had a wide open border in this country. That's one of the many reasons why President Trump carried every political battleground states. It's one of the many reasons why President Trump won the popular vote and the Electoral College.
And
we're in election season now, and this is going to be on the ballot.
Upside down from those numbers. He has done a complete flip-flop. Yes, he has. You will see there was 3 different polls done last week, and they all show him. Now, above 70% of people are against his immigration policies and the way that he's handling it. So his policies, as you were talking about before, they're getting lumped into the perception of what America sees in public opinion. Again, they care about whether or not they can pay their mortgage or their rent, whether or not they can pay for their groceries, whether or not they can pay for an expensive medical bill, whether or not they can pay for childcare, whether or not they can pay for health care.
And you're
right.
That's
what Americans care about right now.
You're right. The polls are going in that direction. There's a new poll out today saying the majority of Americans, or increasing numbers of Americans, not the majority, are starting to be unhappy with the way President Trump is handling immigration. But whilst you've got far left radical activists on the street of Minneapolis blowing whistles in the faces of men trying to do their jobs, you are taking those major issues off the front pages of the papers. You're taking the cost of living crisis off it, but you are brilliantly creating a noise.
Yes, a distraction from
Trump,
all of the other policy issues
which means
that are
it's
plaguing
not
Americans.
Which means it's not about anything
it's
other
not
than
something
political.
that I enjoy.
It is not about that. Therefore, it's not all of this noise on the streets of Minneapolis, which is being created by the agitators who, as I say, if they went home, ICE would just be knocking on doors and taking away the bad guys. But whilst the people are there creating this noise, you're stopping the focus on the issues which matter to real people. You're creating a weight of opinion that is going to be against President Trump, and that is going to play into the hands of the Democrats come the midterms, Matt. So they are executing a very efficient strategy if what they want to do is disrupt the Republicans going into the midterms. It's working.
Well, look, but I do think the biggest challenge for the Democrat Party right now is the Democrat Party. And when it's about poll numbers, let's take the Wall Street Journal. The Wall Street Journal came out with a recent poll that showed on every issue, pretty much, that voters care about, Republicans were outperforming Democrats on those issues. And I do believe that, unfortunately, the issue of law enforcement, unfortunately, the issue of safety and security has become a political issue. It should be an American issue. All Americans should rally behind the fact that if you're removing people from this country who are illegally in this country, that's something to support. They broke the law. Now, if you disagree with the law, then go run for Congress. If you disagree with the law, go change the laws. But all President Trump is doing is enforcing the laws in the books. And I'll say it again. President Obama used ICE to deport people from this country illegally. I didn't see these protests in Minneapolis when President Obama was doing it. You're seeing it when President Trump does it, because it isn't about the policy. This is about politics for many people out there protesting. And that's unfortunate.
It's about
safety and security matters.
He's going and doing it.
When you have people who are in this country illegally, who've committed heinous acts in many cases, rape, sexual assault, homicide, that's a problem.
Criminals are always going to be criminals. They don't really change their stripes or their colors. What I'm saying
so
is
they should be in the country
criminals
illegally?
then and there's criminals now. It's the way that he is going about doing it. That
the same way that President Obama did it. The same way that President Obama did it using ICE. Let's be
You just
you
just said the same way. Okay, great.
President Obama used
and so
ICE.
why weren't there people in the streets? I'm going to ask you when President Obama did it.
Because there's politics.
Because he wasn't operating and sending people into these ICE agents with 47 days of training. And y'all, viewers, do you know why it's 47 days? Because of vanity, because he's the 47th president. He knocked down and cut more in half the required training for these so-called ICE and law enforcement agents. Viewers, excuse me. So that's what this is all about. These people are not trained. They do not have the right protocol temperament to be going out into city streets and doing basically hand-to-hand combat at this point.
But they shouldn't have to be doing.
You're right. They shouldn't, and they're being put in this position by Donald Trump.
Donald Trump.
You can
Donald Trump could cure cancer, and you would scream at the sky, Laurie.
Donald Trump.
Let's listen.
Donald Trump could cure cancer and you would scream at the sky and find a problem with it. And that is the issue with the left. You hate him so much. Anything good he does, you cannot accept.
Another generalization.
And he's just doing what he was voted in to do at the end of the day. That is it.
To kill American citizens on American streets. That's not what Americans voted for. I can tell you that much, my friend.
Is there something, though, also about this president, which means that when a law enforcement agent takes the wrong action of pulling a trigger against an unarmed man, that people blame the president in the White House? I can't think of another leader who would be literally blamed for the actions of one man who pulled a trigger in a very difficult, stressful situation.
All
although
the
it was
Capitol
wrong.
Police officers, did any of those officers ever deploy their weapon on any of those protesters on January 6th? Guess what? Crickets, everybody, because the answer is no. So I felt threatened. I felt like my life, this woman was using her 4,000-pound car and she was using it as a weapon to kill me, when everyone could see in the video that that's not at all what happened as well. These excuses that are made up are really rich when then you pardon all of the people who committed acts against law enforcement officers, including killed a person, a member of the Capitol Police, but they're tight on law enforcement, right? They support cops, they support law enforcement only when it's convenient for them.
I think the situations are very, very different with January the 6th and what's happening in
either you support law enforcement or you don't, in my book.
But the law
enforcement
enforcement
on January the 6th?
Who
let them all in on January the 6th, Laurie? Who opened the doors? How did they all get in?
Who opened the doors?
Go on, I don't know, Laurie.
Go on, who opened the doors?
How did they all get in there
Your
on
gotcha
January?
moment from you. Who opened the doors?
Well, I'm saying, we've all seen the videos. We've all seen the videos. It didn't make sense at all. They had help. The people on that day had help and were encouraged to go in there.
I think that the thing is, you're saying, do people who have some sympathy with what's happening to the ICE agents, because I do have sympathy for what's happening to the ICE agents, what they're trying to do, is do we support law enforcement? Absolutely. But to sit there to advocate that the protesters are right is not supporting law enforcement. It's going against.
Why are they not supporting law enforcement just because of their presence to be there?
Because they're obstructing the guys who are trying to do their job, literally with sports utility vehicles. And Nicole Good, I don't think, deserved to die. I think he could have shot the tyres of that car as she was using it as a weapon. I think you could have shot the tyres of that car. That woman did not deserve to die. And not to be shot in her face. I completely agree with you. And I also think this guy didn't deserve to die. But again, I bring it back to the question, what would happen if the agitators and the protesters did not turn up on the streets in Minneapolis tomorrow? What would happen then? ICE would go about their job.
That's a prayer that I have. Let's wish it all into, Bev. I'm dead serious. Like, yes. But peace. That's what I want. But I don't want people to keep showing up and getting hurt. Like, I don't want buildings to be burned down. I don't want physical harm to come to anybody. And those that say that people want or wish that upon anyone, you are wrong on so many levels. And how dare you even put those thoughts out there to accuse me of having those feelings?
Let me just ask you this then, as a British person, and why is it Minneapolis is so much of a tinderbox when other states aren't responding in this way? Is this because it was the home of George Floyd? Is it because it was the birthplace of Black Lives Matter?
You don't remember here in Washington, D.C., people were very upset, Bev, for the size of this city and how many people who live here, which is under 1 million, by the way. It was... I thought it was a great show of solidarity and people that were very, very upset, especially business owners and restaurant owners here in the city who still are not recovered from what happened last summer.
But it isn't like Minneapolis, is it?
Texas and Florida have larger communities that they should be going after the worst of the worst, and we don't see them there. Why aren't they there?
Because
why aren't they ICE agents sent in mass numbers to those border towns?
They may be, but they wouldn't be on the front.
Florida. I can tell you that they're not there.
But they wouldn't be on the front page. We wouldn't be talking about them now. We're only talking about them because the protesters have been there and caused so much violence and aggression.
Democratic governors, viewers, that's why, or governor, or Democratic mayors, and that's why. What's happening in the state of Maine right now? Governor Janet Mills is running against Susan Collins for the United States Senate in the state of Maine, and Donald Trump is sending the ICE agents there as well. They're arresting people.
So, you mean
the police
blue
chief
states?
The other day, mistaken identity.
So you mean it's the blue states where this action kicks off, and it's not in the red states? Is that what you mean?
Donald Trump has said that that's what his plan is to do, and that's what he's done. That's why he targeted Chicago. He targeted Washington, D.C. He targeted Los Angeles. These are all run by Democrats.
But hasn't the crime fallen in Washington, Bev?
To cause chaos.
The crime's fallen in Washington.
The crime has fallen in Washington, definitely. Statistically, the crime has fallen in Washington because we've got the National Guard on the street predominantly and police everywhere. You can't walk down the street without seeing police.
The crime in Minneapolis had fallen in the past year as well, but yet here, all of
Why do the left not want crime to fall? Laurie, why do you not want crime to fall? Washington has been improved by his actions.
I never said that I didn't want that.
So
but you live here, so you must see what I see. And Matt, you live here, do you? You see?
Yeah, the National Guard is still here in the metros.
And it makes you feel safer as a woman? Does it make you feel safer?
To see a presence, for sure, yeah. But what was happening before with people, plucking delivery men off and opening car doors to physically harm them, all of this is on video. Go and look for yourselves, everybody, because I'll be challenged here that it's fake news or that I have Trump derangement syndrome. What was happening to people in our community, that's exactly why people in Minneapolis have decided to go and stand out and peacefully protest, and why they're not just sitting in their homes.
Though, is it?
And when people say, why do they have to do this? Why do they have to go out? It's because they feel like their neighbors or their community members' rights are being violated. And in most cases, they are. And it's been clearly demonstrated. And the courts are getting involved. And in most cases, they've issued stays or protective orders saying that they can't do the kinds of very aggressive tactics that they've been doing over the last couple of weeks.
Let's move back to a British story, shall we?
Please, let's do.
The Guardian are running this evening here in the US, in the morning there in the UK. But apparently the Conservatives facing this backlash over this statement that they gave out when it was announced that Suella Braverman was going to join Reform, because they said that the Tories basically said, I'm paraphrasing, we did everything that we could to help Suella Braverman with her mental health, but she obviously was not happy being in the Conservatives. Adam, what do you think this is about? Is this a mistake? They've since withdrew it. They said that was a draft statement they weren't supposed to send out, and somebody sent it out, which either way, either you've sent it out in error or you did it deliberately. Both are bad. Yeah. Do you think they were deliberately trying to cast her as crazy woman who's gone to Reform?
Yes. Without doubt. She was very popular with the Conservative members. They want to try and damage her reputation with the support that she's got. They know that there's going to be a lot of Conservative voters that now go over to Reform because of her. As I said, I lost any sort of support that I had for the Conservatives around 2020, mid-2020. I could never vote for them again. But Suella was one that every now and then would pop up and try and say and do the right things. And I'd think, I could support you. And now she's at Reform. I think she's strengthening them. This is just an attack to try and tarnish her reputation, to try and make people think that she's some sort of crazy, extreme sort of person. We see the comments from Priti Patel in a week, sort of likening the Reform Party to a certain party in the 1930s in Germany. That is such a lazy and terrible tactic. People see through that now. We're not stupid. We know Reform are not far right. We know Reform are not extreme. If anything, people on the right want Reform to talk even tougher. You know, but they're playing to the central voters as well. And that is why I believe Reform are going to run away with this next election, because they are saying the right things to most people, most of the electorate. And Britain is only going to get worse. This immigration problem is just going to get worse and worse. We're going to have more sexual assaults and rapes by these asylum seekers. And even people on the left are going to think we need change. And it's going to be between the Greens and Reform, in my opinion, for their next election. And he is off with the fairies, that Zach Polanski. It is going to be between people holding their nose and voting for Raj, or having these green communist lunatics, in my opinion, come in and ruin Britain. So look, it's a good addition. Suella Braverman.
Yeah. Matt Terrell, you've worked with, you were former Chief of Staff to Marco Rubio. You know politics inside and out. It is a dirty business. But do you think it was appropriate for the Conservatives to put out a statement that referenced Suella Braverman's mental well-being and her mental health when she's never spoken about that?
Yeah, I don't think it's appropriate at all. Look, I think all too often our politics becomes personal and in many cases inaccurate. But look, it's about the policies. That's what voters care about, whether it's voters in the UK or voters in the United States. Voters care about policy, I think now more than ever, given the challenges that we're facing, whether it's economically, as a country and around the world, whether it's from a foreign policy standpoint. You know, it comes down to the policies. And, you know, I think one of the reasons why President Trump has been successful, not just in 2016, but obviously in the last election, 2024, was he focused on the policies that Americans cared about. And that's something I think voters nationwide care about, something to lean into.
Laurie, what do you make of it? Because they did withdraw this statement, but they certainly suggested that she was struggling with her mental health. That's inexcusable, isn't it?
Just putting out a suggested statement is a statement, even if you retract it. And anyone to criticize anyone's mental health, specifically a woman in this case, which I found even more highly offensive than if it wasn't, because they knew exactly what they were doing. And to retract it was just, like I said, another statement. There's no room for it.
There's no justification.
Ever.
And, you know, we were sort of joking off air beforehand that every time you've been on this show, it seems that a Conservative is leaving to join the Reform Party.
Every single time.
So, as an American,
I should start making bets.
What conclusions are you drawing about the state of British politics when you hear this story repeatedly?
Lots of change. We're seeing, and our president is very interested in what's going on over in your neck of the woods as well. And, you know, our allies, what's happening is migration is affecting not just the United States, it's affecting countries all over Europe. And I get a case of that every single week, a reminder. And it's fascinating to me.
Yeah. Do you think we're wrong in the UK to want to protect our borders in the way that we do?
No, I just hope that people do it, you know, with an empathetic and humanistic mind, and, you know, make a policy moving forward. None of this grandfathering in kind of shenanigans. Once you come up with a policy position, I encourage you all to stick to it and move forward.
Should we just do a quick look at the Beckhams a bit lighter while we've got a couple of minutes before we take the weather? Because, Adam, I know you know the Beckhams. They've been seen out in Paris, Victoria and David, with Cruz and Romeo and Harper. Do you know what? Until this week, I couldn't have told you the names of the other kids, but I've read about them so many times. And this is them showing a stand, isn't it? Look, we're strong together, and probably hoping maybe Brooklyn looks and thinks, oh, I wish I could be part of that.
Yeah, I just find it so sad that a family can be ripped apart like this. I really do. I just think of my own family and what it would do to my mum. So again, I said it the other day, I feel for Sandra, the nan, I feel for the whole family. This is terrible. To wake up and not have one of your kids talking to you, or to badmouth you in the press, for me would be my worst nightmare. My kids are my whole life. I couldn't care less if I had no money at all. As long as I had my kids around me, I'd work around it. So to have one of my kids never talking to me or trying to make me out to be some sort of monster or a bad person to the whole world, that would be crushing. And I just hope they do get through this. I really do, for the family.
Yeah. Matt, I don't know how familiar you are with the Beckhams and whether you see them as the British alternative royal family. Do you have a strong opinion on this family? Basically, they're estranged from their firstborn son, who's called Brooklyn because he was conceived in Brooklyn. I mean, the poor boy was always going to have a difficult life when literally everybody knew where he was even conceived before he was born.
You know, look, I hope they figure it out here. And family's the most important thing. Some people says it's a cliche thing to say. It really is. And so, you know, look, this seems like a very personal thing. Unfortunately, it's out in the public. That's unfortunate. But look, I hope they figure it out. And, you know, it's something that they need to work on.
Yeah, Laurie, I imagine your heart breaks for this family as well. The detail that's being dragged through the press, all about the wedding and the inappropriate dancing and all the people who are now coming out and saying what this was about. It's a really mucky, horrible business, isn't it?
Well, as I was on with you when this was live breaking news at the time, and I will again say that my prediction is that, you know, Brooklyn and his wife put this statement out because they couldn't handle the misinformation that was out there, and they're going to post it and then ghost it, meaning you're not going to hear from them for a while. There won't be any Oprah tell-alls.
Let's hope so. Right, lots more to come this evening. Don't go anywhere. We're going to take a very quick break for the weather.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello, very good morning to you. This is your GB News weather update coming to you from the Met Office. Storm Chandra is here. It's already brought some very heavy rain and it's going to continue to do so through today, as well as the risk of damaging winds. The strongest winds will be across parts of Northern Ireland. Eastern parts of Northern Ireland have the risk of gusts of around 75 miles per hour and some significant disruption likely. Worth noting elsewhere, as the band of heavy rain pushes its way northwards, we're going to see some significant snow building up over higher ground of parts of northern England and also much of Scotland, and then elsewhere showers following in behind after a very wet night towards the southwest. Temperatures just about getting into double figures towards the south, much colder than this further north, all the while when it's so wet and so windy, well, it's going to feel much colder than those temperatures may suggest. So a wet end to the day across much of central, northern and eastern Scotland. Lots of snow falling and accumulating over the higher ground. That's going to cause some disruption. The strong winds and the heavy rain continues across Northern Ireland for a little while yet. Difficult conditions for the evening rush hour. Meanwhile, plenty of showers then feeding in from the south and west across much of England and Wales. Just some central eastern parts of England having a drier, clearer end to the day. Then as we go overnight, well, we start to see the influence of Storm Chandra clearing away. So the weather will be quietening down. There'll be some dry, clear weather across some central eastern parts of England, and that could allow for a touch of frost perhaps. Elsewhere, some rain towards the northeast of Scotland. Some showery rain towards the southwest, and with that, temperatures not dropping as low where we have the cloud and the rain. Then Wednesday, actually, for a large chunk of the country, doesn't look too bad a day. Yes, a frosty start, but there will be some dry, even sunny weather around for many places. The exception being across eastern parts of Scotland, some wet, some wintry weather here, and also across much of Northern Ireland and at times parts of Wales and the southwest, where it will be cloudy and wet at times as well. Temperatures, well, similar to today, but feeling a bit more pleasant out of the rain.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Sucks, but...
Welcome back to The Late Show Live. Now, that breaking news I just brought you earlier, Gregory Bavino has been removed from his role as Border Patrol Commander-at-Large. It's the guy in the middle here at the lectern. He's expected to retire soon, they say. That's a coincidence. And they cited a home security official and two people with knowledge of the change. They say the Trump administration is reconsidering its most aggressive tactics. Now, one man who will know exactly what's going on, because I believe he broke this story, independent journalist Nick Salter, who's just got back from Minnesota today. You've been there for 3 weeks, Nick.
3.5 weeks, yeah. It's a war zone out there, and I hate to say it like that. This is a major American city. It is a beautiful state. I mean, seriously, like, I wish I would have had the time, but I could have gone out there and I could have gone skiing and everything. I mean, it's a fantastic state, but what it's been turned into a war zone. There's no other way to put it.
Why has it been turned into that, and by whom?
You've got, unfortunately, you have the mayor of Minneapolis, which is obviously the largest city in the state of Minnesota, as well as the governor. Tim Walz, who is in a very vulnerable political position right now, where he is trying to figure out how to get into higher office, and now has to because of the Somali fraud scandal that my friend Nick Shirley has
exposed that, didn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. And so he's now finding another way to both distract from that and try to drive the story somewhere else.
So I was just asking Laurie Watkins, who felt very strongly tonight that ICE shouldn't be in Minneapolis, and I said to her, well, what will happen? What would happen if the protesters just stayed at home tomorrow? What would happen? You've been there.
Then they would be deporting people that shouldn't be here to begin with. Child rapists, killers with warrants from Honduras or something. That's who they're going after. That's who this guy who, several days ago now decided to insert himself in the middle of this deportation operation and wanted to go head-to-head with Border Patrol agents, because that's what he's been told to do by the radical left. That's what he was there to do, and unfortunately he lost his life because of that. And I hate to say it like this, but in reality he lost his life defending child rapists from foreign countries. And why would you do that? I'm talking about this as an American, right? But then I look at the problems that are happening over in the UK and in Europe in general, and you're like, it's significantly worse over there. People need to wake up.
So they would say, and this is what I've just spent nearly 2 hours debating with Laurie Watkins about, that she's saying that they are taking, the ICE agents are seizing innocent people who may have been here for 20 years, they may have been the local gardeners and the nannies and the drivers, and they've lived a quiet life, and those people are being dragged out by their hair and deported. Is that what ICE are doing?
Okay, well, they're definitely not dragging anybody out by their hair unless they're resisting arrest or being violent, right? Like basically, what's going on is you're getting a free trip back home. I mean, that's where you say that they're living a quiet, peaceful life, but they didn't come here quietly and peacefully. They came here illegally. We have laws and borders. If you don't have borders, you don't have a country. Look at what's going on over in London right now, for example, right? Or, even a better example is Paris. Paris, you can't go over there without being pickpocketed over near the Statue of Liberty by people that barely speak English anymore, because that's basically, I mean, how many millions of people have been imported into Europe, into once beautiful cities? And if you're not going to enforce your immigration laws, you may as well not enforce any other laws.
It is a massive problem, and that's why we look with some fascination about what ICE are doing and President Trump's policy to clamp down on them. But what do the protesters think they're doing? Because obviously it's irrational to want to defend rapists and child killers. Like, no sane person would want to do that, and they're clearly not insane, but they are politically motivated to do what? Cause so much blowback on President Trump that this reflects badly on him come the midterms?
Well, there's several reasons, and that is definitely one of them. But one of the biggest reasons politically is because, unfortunately, in the United States, your political or congressional districts are determined by population, not legal population, but total population. So even if you have millions of illegals inside of a state, that still counts toward your House of Representatives representation. So if you deport all of those people, which is what people like Bovino want to do, you end up losing several seats in the U.S. Congress. So, of course, they wouldn't want to do that. Of course, they don't want a lot of their... And in Minnesota, for example, you can have one U.S. citizen vouch for 8 other voters in federal elections, and state elections as well. So you don't have to have any proof. If you're one of those 8 voters, you don't have any proof of U.S. citizenship or eligibility to vote. You can still vote in those elections. And when you have Bovino out there, you'll see him as one of the faces of mass deportation. He'll go around, you'll see him in viral videos, and I'm revealing this now because it seems like we're at a point where some forces are trying to force him out. He's going around, he'll take a picture of somebody's face, right? And they're like, oh, well, they're going to add him to a database. No, what he's doing is he's trying to go back and when you let in millions and millions of people under the Biden administration, they were taking pictures of each and every one of them. He is cross-referencing that with a database and finding out whether or not you came into the country under the previous administration across the border, and if he finds out you did, you're going back. It doesn't matter how many other crimes you've committed.
Is Greg Bovino stepping down or being forced out of that job? Is that a victory for the Democrats and for Tim Walz?
Absolutely. It is a victory for the Democrats. No doubt about it. And that is at the hands of, I believe anyway, the Commissioner of Customs and Border Protection, which is Rodney Scott. And I'm not going to shut up about it. I don't care how many people threaten me over it. But
isn't he though sending in the heavyweight in Tom Hummon, who will get stuff done? He'll go in there, he'll metaphorically knock heads together. No, you don't agree with that?
No, I don't agree with that. Unfortunately, when you keep hearing worst of the worst on TV, that basically says amnesty for everybody else. All the other illegals, they end up getting amnesty. I love Tom Homan as a person. He's a real patriot, but I don't agree with his immigration stances. I believe that just deporting worst of the worst is not what 80 million Americans voted for. We want all of them gone because every single one of them plays a role in elections all across the country. So.
Interesting. Okay. Are you going to go back, Nick? Is it safe for you to go back in 10 seconds?
No, it's not safe, but I'm going to go back anyway.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Pleasure.
You're doing great work. I really appreciate it. Nick Saucer, you can, of course, find him on social media everywhere. And don't go anywhere. We're going to take a very quick break. See you in a minute.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello, very good morning to you. This is your GB News weather update coming to you from the Met Office. Storm Chandra is here. It's already brought some very heavy rain and it's going to continue to do so through today, as well as the risk of damaging winds. The strongest winds will be across parts of Northern Ireland. Eastern parts of Northern Ireland have the risk of gusts of around 70-75 miles per hour and some significant disruption likely. Worth noting elsewhere, as the band of heavy rain pushes its way northwards, we're going to see some significant snow building up over higher ground of parts of northern England and also much of Scotland, and then elsewhere showers following in behind after a very wet night towards the southwest. Temperatures just about getting into double figures towards the south, much colder than this further north, all the while when it's so wet and so windy, well, it's going to feel much colder than those temperatures may suggest. So a wet end to the day across much of central, northern and eastern Scotland. Lots of snow falling and accumulating over the higher ground. That's going to cause some disruption. The strong winds and the heavy rain continues across Northern Ireland for a little while yet. Difficult conditions for the evening rush hour. Meanwhile, plenty of showers then feeding in from the south and west across much of England and Wales. Just some central eastern parts of England having a drier, clearer end to the day. Then as we go overnight, well, we start to see the influence of Storm Chandra clearing away. So the weather will be quietening down. There'll be some dry, clear weather across some central eastern parts of England, and that could allow for a touch of frost perhaps elsewhere. Some rain towards the northeast of Scotland. Some showery rain towards the southwest, and with that, temperatures not dropping as low where we have the cloud and the rain. Then Wednesday, actually, for a large chunk of the country, doesn't look too bad a day. Yes, a frosty start, but there will be some dry, even sunny weather around for many places, the exception being across eastern parts of Scotland, some wet, some wintry weather here, and also across much of Northern Ireland and at times parts of Wales and the southwest, where it will be cloudy and wet at times as well. Temperatures, well, similar to today, but feeling a bit more pleasant out of the rain.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
I'm Andrew Pearce. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pearce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
A very, very good evening to you. What a quiet day it's been in British politics. Welcome to Farage. I'll be your host tonight, Martin Daubney. Coming up on tonight's action-packed show.
I'm announcing that I resign the Conservative whip. I am joining Reform UK.
Yes, in sensational fashion, the former Tory Home Secretary Suella Braverman today defected to Reform UK, calling time what she called Tory failure. But who could be the next on the list of final defectors before the deadline day? And meanwhile,
Andy Burnham's doing a great job as the Mayor of Manchester, but having an election for the Mayor of Manchester when it's not necessary would divert our resources away from the elections that we must have.
Keir Starmer has risked full-blown civil war in the Labour Party as he blocks the Manchester mayoral candidate Andy Burnham from standing as an MP. I'll be joined by the Mayor's former advisor on nighttime industries for an exclusive bombshell interview in just a moment's time. And also,
we will remove people with no right to be here, and we will secure Britain's borders.
A GB News exclusive from our man Chopper has revealed scandalous government plans for what happens after migrants are deported. And finally,
I promise you that a Reform government will end all of these vexatious claims taken against our veterans from conflict after conflict.
Yes, earlier today, Reform UK also announced that they will pardon any convicted Troubles veterans in direct opposition to the government. I'll be joined by the president of the Veterans for Reform UK movement for tonight's finale. And that's all to come. Also joined by Lee Anderson in the studio and Nigel Nelson. So it's going to really kick off. Get yourself a brew. I'll see you shortly. That's all to come. Here's your news headlines with Katie Bowen.
Martin, thank you and good evening. The headlines at 7:02. A major political defection. Former Conservative Home Secretary Suella Braverman